The air inside the Washington, D.C. Peace Summit Hall was heavy. The room was filled with presidents, journalists, generals, and Secret Service agents. Cameras were everywhere. Red carpets, golden lights, suits and ties, cold handshakes and colder smiles. But no one saw it coming. The moderator called out, "President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso and former U.S. President Donald Trump, please come to the stage." The crowd shifted. Whispers broke out. Many expected conflict. The young African leader had been outspoken, especially about neo-colonialism and foreign military presence in Africa. Trump, never one to back down, had his usual confident smirk as he stepped up. But Ibrahim, he walked with calm, purpose. Something in his eyes said today wasn't about politics. When he reached Trump, he didn't shake his hand. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket, slowly, carefully. Security tensed. Then he pulled out something old, a yellowed envelope. Without a word, he placed it in Trump's hand. The world froze. The cameras zoomed in. Trump opened it, and for the first time in a long while, Donald Trump looked human. He looked like a man who had just seen a ghost. The letter trembled in Trump's hand. His voice dropped. No crowd, no noise. Only a single breath as he began to read. "Dear future, my name is Corporal Michael J. Reynolds. I'm stationed in Burkina Faso. I don't know if I'll live to see another day, but I had to write this. Yesterday, our convoy passed through a small village. The kids ran after us waving. One of them, a skinny boy with no shoes, smiled at me like I was a hero. I gave him my last protein bar. He gave me a mango. His name was Ibrahim." A gasp rippled through the audience. Traoré's gaze didn't leave Trump's face. He stood silent, grounded, as if holding back a storm inside him. That night, our camp was hit. A rebel attack. Most of my unit fled, but I stayed. I had to make sure that village was safe. I made a promise to that boy. I'd protect them. Not because it was my duty, but because he looked at me like I mattered. If this letter is ever found, remind America that dignity isn't about flags or medals. It's about staying when you don't have to. Trump's voice cracked. His lips quivered. The room was silent. Nobody blinked. Trump sat down. No longer a leader, no longer a symbol, just a man holding a fragile memory. Ibrahim stepped forward. His voice, when he finally spoke, was soft, yet it carried like thunder. "I was 8. I remember that mango. I remember your soldier. He didn't run, he stayed. I never saw him again." A tear slipped down Trump's face. Real, no performance. "I found this letter a year ago. It was buried with a metal box in my old village when we were rebuilding after a flood. Alongside it was his name tag. I've carried it every day since." He pulled a small, rusted piece of metal from his coat and showed it to the cameras. "Michael J. Reynolds." People began crying in the audience. Reporters lowered their cameras. Trump looked at the letter again, then at Traoré. "I knew Reynolds," he said. "He served under me. I signed his deployment myself." A pause. Then Trump whispered, "He died believing in something." Traoré nodded. "And so do I." Outside the summit hall, the news was exploding. Inside, no one dared to speak. The cameras were still rolling, but the journalists were frozen. The usual aggressive flashes had stopped. Some wiped their eyes, others lowered their heads. Traoré stepped back and took a seat beside Trump. Not across from him, beside him. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone. The moderator tried to speak, but her voice shook. Traoré spoke first. "You see, this is not about power. Not today. It's about memory. That soldier and Michael, he wasn't African. He wasn't Burkina, but he treated us like family. He gave his life without asking for anything back." He looked out at the world through the cameras. How many Michaels have been forgotten? How many children like me grew up carrying a moment no one else remembers? Trump didn't interrupt. For once, he just listened. The room was still. Outside, hashtags began to trend. The letter. Michael Reynolds. Ibrahim remembers. But inside that hall, it wasn't about social media. It was about the past whispering to the present. Traoré took a breath. I've never told anyone this, but the day that convoy left, rebels came back that night. My mother threw herself over me when the first shots rang out. His voice caught. She didn't make it. The room shifted. Quiet sobs echoed near the back. Trump's mouth parted slightly. Even he didn't seem to know what to say. Traoré continued, steady. Michael came back, alone. He carried me from the flames. I had a burn on my leg. He used his own shirt to bandage it. He looked down for a moment, then back up. I still have the scar. It reminds me every day that not all heroes wear medals. Some wear dust. Some leave only letters behind. Someone in the front row, a war veteran, stood up and saluted. The room followed. In silence. They weren't saluting Traoré or Trump. They were saluting a name written in fading ink, Michael J. Reynolds, and everything he unknowingly passed on to a little boy in a torn village. That little boy now sat on the world stage. Trump cleared his throat. But for the first time in a long career of speeches and sound bites, he had nothing clever to say. No slogans, no fire, just silence. He looked down at the letter again. I remember Michael. He was quiet, said strange things in mess halls, talked about the weight of peace, said sometimes it's heavier than war. He paused. I didn't understand him back then. Now I do. Trump turned to the audience. People think peace comes from deals, documents, and dollar signs. But maybe it comes from staying when you don't have to. He turned to Traoré. I'm sorry for everything we got wrong. Gasps rippled through the room again. Traoré didn't gloat. He nodded, like a son forgiving a father who finally understood. That moment, captured by hundreds of cameras, didn't go viral because of politics. It went viral because it was real. One man spoke from memory, another from regret, and both from truth. A technician zoomed the main camera onto the letter. Traoré gently turned the page over. The back had one final line, faded, but still visible. If this finds its way into the hands of someone with power, do one thing for me. Protect boys like Ibrahim. Wherever they are, please. Trump's hands trembled. Traoré placed a finger on that sentence. Michael never knew I'd become a president. He didn't see that far. He just wanted one of us to make it out. The lights in the hall flickered slightly. Outside, storm clouds gathered over D.C. Trump whispered, "We failed him." Traoré nodded. But today, we can begin again. The letter was handed to a UN peace historian on the side of the stage. Cameras followed its every move. It was now a global artifact, not just a letter. A message carried from a forgotten battlefield to the heart of global power. Children across America and Africa were watching. So were veterans, and so were families who had lost someone whose story never made the news. This was no longer about Trump or Traoré. It was about Michael and the quiet promise of a soldier who stayed behind. Suddenly, a voice came from the audience. "Mr. President, may I say something?" Everyone turned. A girl in her 20s stood up, red dress, brown curls, a trembling voice. I'm Sarah Reynolds. Michael was my father." The whole hall stopped breathing. Trump stood. Traoré blinked, stunned. Sarah walked slowly to the stage. Her hands clutched a tiny photo, the only one she had of her father in uniform. "I was only 2 when he left. My mom raised me alone. She passed last year." We never knew what really happened in Burkina Faso. She looked at Traoré. Her voice broke. But now I know. You were the boy my father wrote about. You were real. Tears ran freely down Traoré's cheeks. He stepped forward. Your father saved my life. I owe him everything. Sarah handed him the photo. My mom said he believed one good act could change the world. She never stopped believing that, not even when no one cared. Trump whispered. She was right. Traoré hugged her, not as a leader, but as a survivor finally meeting the legacy of the man who didn't run. The crowd stood and applauded, but it wasn't loud. It was reverent. The skies outside cracked with thunder. Rain poured over Washington, D.C. Inside the summit hall, no one moved. Trump stood next to Sarah and Traoré. The three of them held hands in silence. Then Traoré did something that left the world speechless. He took off his presidential sash, the green and gold symbol of his authority, and handed it to Sarah. This means nothing without people like your father. It's only cloth. But today, it belongs to the Reynolds family. Sarah gasped. Her knees buckled. Traoré helped her sit, then turned to the global leaders. I'm asking for one thing. Not aid, not deals, not troops. I'm asking every nation here to name one school, one road, or one hospital after a soldier like Michael Reynolds. Someone who wasn't fighting to conquer, but to protect. The room erupted. Applause, tears, shouts. Even leaders who once dismissed Traoré stood to honor the moment. Because it wasn't a speech. It was truth. And truth, spoken by a man who had once been barefoot with a mango in his hand, had the power to shake the world. Backstage, Traoré's assistant rushed toward him. Sir, it's the village, from back home. They're watching. Traoré took the phone. The signal cracked, then cleared. Voices filled the speaker, children cheering, elders praying, and then an old woman's voice trembled through the line. Ibrahim, my son, your mother would be proud. The world now sees you, not just as president, but as that little boy she held in the fire. Traoré froze. It was Auntie Kadi, the woman who raised him after his mother died. Do you remember what she said before she passed? The old woman asked. He nodded, whispering, one day, your silence will roar louder than any gun. Tears streamed down his face. Behind him, Sarah Reynolds watched. She was crying too, not just for her father anymore, but for the millions of forgotten mothers, soldiers, and children swallowed by history. Trump approached gently. You should go see them, he said. Your village. The camera caught something rare. Trump, helping Traoré pack a small black bag backstage, quietly without fanfare. That moment would go viral, not because of who they were, but because of who they were finally becoming. 2 hours later, Traoré and Sarah Reynolds were on a private military jet. Destination, Burkina Faso. The summit paused. The world watched. CNN ran a headline. From president to pilgrim, Traoré returns to his roots. Sarah sat by the window, staring at clouds. I used to hate that he never came home, she said. Traoré listened in silence. But now, I get it. He stayed because there was someone who needed him more than me. She looked at him, her voice cracking. I'm glad it was you. Traoré didn't speak. He reached into his coat and handed her something. A folded handkerchief, dusty, burned at the corner. This was wrapped around my leg the night your father saved me. She held it like it was glass, priceless, sacred. Then, thunder cracked again. Not from the sky, from below. They were flying over Tougan, Traoré's home village. The pilot tilted the plane. Below them, hundreds of people stood in the rain, waving cloths, palm leaves, and even torn pages of notebooks. Some wrote, "Welcome, Michael." Others just held candles. Traoré placed his hand on the window and whispered, "They remember." The jet landed in silence. No reporters, no soldiers, just people. Barefoot children surrounded Sarah, giving her small beads and bracelets. Traoré walked ahead, through narrow paths and old clay walls. At the edge of the village stood a tree, burned, cracked, but still alive. Beneath it a small grave marked only by stones and a rusty helmet. Michael's final resting place. Sarah knelt. No flowers, just wet earth and silence. Then Traoré reached into his bag and pulled out a mango. It was green, with small black spots, just like the ones he'd steal as a boy. He placed it gently on the grave. "He told me once," Traoré said softly, "that peace is like a mango. You never know how sweet it is, until it's ripe." He turned to Sarah. "This is where he saved me, where he became a part of us. Now you're part of us too." Sarah placed her photo of Michael next to the mango and whispered, "We're home, Daddy." The crowd behind them bowed their heads. It didn't feel like politics. It felt like family, a global one, built from dust, sacrifice, and a single yellowed letter. Back in the village's small house, Traoré sat with Sarah. The yellowed envelope lay on the rough wooden table between them. Sarah hesitated, then carefully unfolded a smaller piece of paper inside the letter, one she hadn't seen before. It was Michael's handwriting again. "If you find this, Ibrahim, know that my fight never ended with a gun. It ends with you. Promise me you will use your voice to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Promise me you will carry the light when my hands can no longer hold the torch." Sarah's fingers trembled. "Your father believed in you, Ibrahim, even when he didn't know if you'd live." Traoré's eyes glistened. "I will, Sarah. I promise." The room was silent, but the weight of that promise filled every corner. Outside, children's laughter echoed, the sound of hope. News of the village visit and the letter's hidden message spread like wildfire. World leaders began naming schools, roads, and hospitals after Michael Reynolds. But something deeper was happening. People everywhere were writing letters, to soldiers, to children, to leaders, sharing stories of forgotten kindness. Social media flooded with pictures of scars, medals, and mango trees. Schools held moments of silence. Churches rang bells. For once, the world wasn't divided by politics. It was united by a shared memory, a bond between a soldier's sacrifice and a boy's future. And at the center of it all stood Ibrahim Traoré. Not just a president, but a symbol of what happens when courage meets compassion. At a follow-up summit months later, Traoré addressed the world again. But this time, he spoke not as a politician, but as a survivor and a son. He held Michael's letter up. "This is not just a piece of paper. It is a call to every human being, to remember, to care, to act." He looked directly into every camera. "Peace is fragile. It is built in moments like these, in promises made, in scars healed, and in love that crosses borders." The crowd erupted in applause. Sarah stood beside him, tears streaming. Traoré smiled softly. This was the moment the world began to truly listen. Late one evening, as the summit lights dimmed, a quiet knock came at Traoré's hotel door. He opened it to find an elderly man, dressed simply, with tired eyes but steady hands. "I am Colonel James McAllister," the man said softly. "I was Michael's commander." Traoré invited him in, heart pounding. Colonel McAllister pulled out a worn photo of Michael and his unit. They were more than soldiers. They were brothers. Michael told me about the boy he saved, the boy who would grow up to be a leader. The colonel's voice cracked. "I wanted to see if that boy was real. And now I see he is not just real. He is hope." Traoré clasped his hand. In that small hotel room, Two generations connected across time, a bridge built from sacrifice and promise. The story of Michael Reynolds and Ibrahim Traoré rippled far beyond the summit halls. Schools in Burkina Faso planted mango trees in honor of the soldiers' promise. In America, veterans gathered to share stories long buried. Traoré's leadership shifted, from defiant youth to compassionate statesman. Diplomacy took new meaning, not just power, but healing. At the United Nations, a special resolution passed, declaring a day of remembrance for forgotten soldiers who shaped peace silently. The world watched as Traoré, standing beneath a mango tree in his village, declared, "Peace begins when we remember the smallest acts of courage." Tears fell from children, leaders, and strangers who saw themselves in this story. Years later, in a quiet library, Sarah Reynolds placed Michael's letter in a glass case. Beside it, a plaque read, "For those who protect the future, often unseen, for those who inspire hope, often unheard." Traoré visited. He knelt, whispering, "Thank you, Michael." And then, looking at the world around him, he spoke softly. This letter was never about one soldier or one boy. It was about every human heart that dares to hope. The camera zoomed out to reveal children reading the letter together, in English, French, and many languages. A mango tree blossomed in the background. The screen faded to black. If this story touched your heart, if it made you cry or gave you hope, please do these 3 things. 1. Like this video. Let others find this message of courage and peace. 2. Subscribe to join this family of dreamers who believe in change, chapter by chapter, story by story. 3. Comment below. Share your thoughts, your tears, your promises. Tell us, who is the Michael Reynolds in your life? Together we honor the past, change the present, and build a future worth fighting for. Thank you for being here. Your heart is part of this story now.